Is Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events still good? I reread the series with my children. I'm going to tell you things I don't think held up really well, the things that I think are still good, and what my kids thought about the entire series. Hi, I'm Craig, and welcome to Dads Who Read, where we're helping you create meaningful relationships with your kids while also improving yourself. And if you're new to my channel, one of the things we're doing here is going back and rereading books that I enjoyed as a kid and seeing if they still hold up and seeing what my kids think about them. If you're interested in that series, I'll put a playlist up here so that way you can go check them out. But I reread A Series of Unfortunate Events with my kids. Now, this was actually a couple years ago. It started because the Netflix series came out, and I remembered going and seeing the movie with Jim Carrey in theaters, and then to see that the series came out, it felt like, wow, like I never completed the series. I only got the first 3 books, but given that the series went on for so long, given that they're so insistent on getting this made into a series, a TV series, it felt like maybe I should go back and check it out. And so that, once I got that, and then also I kind of had some other revelations at the time that made me feel like I needed to be reading more with my kid. I'll talk about that in another video. My kids, I think I just said one kid, I've got 4. That made me want to pick up the series and dive right into it. So let me go ahead and tell you the things that I did not like about this series, and then I'll tell you things I did like. Then we'll get to what my kids thought. So what I did not like about the series, the first thing is the author is very fixed on the 13 books and 13 chapters in each book structure. This is 13 is supposed to be an unlucky number. This is unfortunate events. And so everything's being shoved into this format. And so it's fine at the beginning. Let's start with the chapters, actually. The 13 chapters is fine at the beginning. The first 3 books, pretty short. Even the next couple, they're pretty short. But as the series goes on, the 13 chapters becomes really constraining as the books get longer and longer. It just feels like the pacing is totally off. It feels like it just stretches out forever. It's not pleasant to be confined to the 13 chapter structure throughout the entire series. And then when you look at that on a broader scale, the 13 books, it really felt like some of these books were just filler books. Like, this book is here because I need to hit 13 books, and so we'll write a whole book about this tiny little thing where it doesn't have much significance, or, it just felt like that constraining structure drove the series a little too much. The other thing that I really did not like about the series was the ending. And I haven't gone on and looked. I'm sure that this is a common critique, but man, is the ending unsatisfying, especially after reading 13 books. There are just, throughout the series, so many plot points are brought up and kind of put on a cliffhanger, and there are indications that this is going to be important later on. And so many of those are just dropped, just totally ignored. And then others are literally burned to the ground. And the 13th book, which you would think is going to be this really satisfying conclusion, wrapping everything up, it almost just is a complete departure from everything that came before that. And it just really did not fit in with the rest of the story. And so it's not a good sign when your main takeaway from a series is that the ending was terrible. And that really is what came. I know a little bit about the plot of the last book, and I know that it has some connections to the previous books, but really the main takeaway for me was that it was incredibly unsatisfying. That doesn't mean that there weren't things that were good about the books. There are definitely things that are good. And actually, one of the things that are really strong is that it's a great way to teach your kids literary devices. So throughout the series, there are lots of different ways that the author is really clever with using writing in a way that you don't really see in other books. I think one example is how he's talking about deja vu, and the narrator is explaining what deja vu is. And as he goes through that page, you get to the end of the page, and he's kind of defining what deja vu is. You turn the page, and it's that same page over again. So he's inducing deja vu, in a sense, by breaking from a traditional storytelling structure. And he has a couple of those things throughout the series. It makes it really fun, and it makes it kind of like a unique book, a unique series of books to teach your kids these kind of things rather than dry lectures. Another thing that is just riddled throughout the book is just so many allusions to literature, to history, to just so many things. I know that I only picked up a fraction of them. In fact, sometimes I wondered if my understanding of the books was inhibited by the fact that I didn't always get the allusions that they were making. But I think that really is the strongest point about this book, is that fact that you can use it to introduce different literary devices, vocabulary. There are a lot of words that are used, and then that word is used over and over again, so it helps get your kids into learning different words. But overall, I think that's like the main strength of these books. Now, what did my kids think of them? Well, my kids loved the characters. So I have 4 kids, but really it was only 3 kids who were around at the time, and really only 2 kids who were old enough to understand what was going on. But they really loved the characters. You have 3 really fun characters. They've got they're not high dimensional, I would say. Like, they've all kind of got their thing. So Sunny is always going to be biting things, Klaus is always going to be reading, and Violet is always going to be inventing. And a few times they'll switch these up. But it makes it really easy for the kids to keep track of the characters and to kind of anticipate what's going to go on. With the Netflix series, we watched a couple of those episodes, and they really liked having read the books and then going to watch the TV series and being able to make that connection. So I think that's another strong point of these books, is being able to bring them into the series. And I know that my kids sometimes would actually say, wait a second, that's not what happened in the books. So it's kind of a fun introduction, and it's a fun series. But the takeaway that sticks with me the most was when we were frantically trying to finish these books. So we had been checking these books out from a library, and we were like almost done when we were getting ready to move across the country. And so on the last day that we're there, we're literally putting things, our stuff's all packed up. We're going and buying the last few things we need to make our trip across the country. And we have this library book, and I'm just trying to get through the end of this 13th book. And I'm reading to my kids in the car as we're running around town, running errands. And finally we finish. I close the book, and I turn around, and my 6-year-old son just yells out, "What about the sugar bowl?" Now, if you've read the books, you know exactly what he means. And if you haven't, then this is a little bit of a spoiler. The whole thing with the sugar bowl goes nowhere, which is crazy. And my 6-year-old realizes he spends so much time building up the sugar bowl, about all the potential it has, about how important this thing is, and then literally just forgets it. Just says, yeah, actually this thing, not important anymore. That was a really unsatisfying ending. To have my 6-year-old son point out how unsatisfying that ending was, again, it just hits home with how this series really does not hold up well. The first few books, love them. Had a lot of fun reading those. As I got in towards the rest of the series, I just felt like, why is this thing so popular? So, is it still good? Some books, yes. I think it still has a lot of value. The series as a whole, not where I'm going to go to recommend to people. This is what you're going to use to get you and your kids into reading. So I do other videos on this. If you're interested in checking out some of these more, looking at whether books are still good, I recommend checking them out here. Also, please subscribe so that way we can help you create those meaningful relationships with your children and also improve yourself. We'll see you next time on Dads Who Read.